are talking today about real estate investing as a first time investor in their first investment journey. And I'm excited today because we have Maribel from Our Wealth Matters. And she actually has a great story because most investors start kind of like house hacking or something, but she went all in and went for it. So she is here to share like how it went, what she learned from it, and what's next for her.
Rita, thank you so much for having me. And Elaine as well. Thank you, thank you.
So I let's just get into it because it's a fun story. Let's start there on how you acquired your property. First of how like what made you like decide like, you know what, I'm going to go and start investing in real estate and why you decided to go for this property.
So to be real with you, it was like I'm first generation in the US. I was sold the dream, the American dream that, you go to school, you get a good job, you're going to be able to buy a house and you'll have your own home someday, right? And I totally ate the Kool-Aid. And then I got to the age of 30, mind you, I live in California. So I live with my family. It's very expensive out here. But I got to 30 and I was like, ¿Dónde está mi casita? I went to university. I'm working in the entertainment industry. I think at the time I was working with NBC Universal and I had just gotten my position as manager. And I think I was either low six figures or wasn't making six figures yet. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm a manager, not even making six figures. I'm out here in California. I can't even afford a house. So I was like, I got really pissed. And I kind of went into like a depression phase. A friend that lives out of Missouri and he's doing real estate, hacking and flips. So by August of the next year, he's like, hey, there's this little casita, but I'm like in the city. And he's like, it's not in the city. It's between like two cities. So it's like 30 minutes away. But over there, 30 minutes is really far to drive somewhere. So he's like, it's basically a small town, but there's a little casita. And I'm like, how much? And he's like, $10,000. And I'm like, bet. I may not have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 for a house here. I have $10,000 though. I've been saving because before I was investing all of it. So I was like, I've been saving. I have $10,000. I could go get that house. He's like, but that house is it's like a full rehab job. And I'm like, okay, how much do you think it'll be? And he's like, 50 something thousand, 50,000, 60,000. I was like, I can do that. I can do that. And I'll have a whole ass house. It came out to be about como 23,000 más this year alone. In 2025, almost 150, 150,000. So, only went over by like 200%.
Not only did you decide to buy a house out of state, you decided to buy a house that needed a whole new house and the insides. Like because I'm thinking investments, right? Like, oh, this was like 2023 and everything, but the majority of people, like when they want to buy a house, they want to like move into the house or like have water, power, sewage, right? Like the utilities that normally you would expect. But you took on this whole project upon yourself of renovating the whole house. How did that feel initially? Because you're like, yeah, I have $10,000, but then the renovation is going to be like $50,000. I'm like, wait, 1 second. This is actually, takes a lot of work.
Obviously you were like motivated, like, yeah, $10,000. Okay, yeah, $50,000. And then I want to hear like how your mindset shifted from that. And then they start telling you like, okay, so this is going to cost this and blah, blah, blah.
What ended up happening is I asked him because he was doing renovation in the city. And I was like, but are they going to be on my ass if I don't like get on it ASAP? And he's like, it's a small town. The like city, quote unquote, or the government, local government's not going to be on your ass. I was like, okay. A couple months later, we get a letter. And so there's a new person in town in charge of these properties, like making sure that the town looks nice. And they're like, so what's your plan? Like, you need to send us a detailed plan of what you're going to fix. And I was like, I don't know what needs fixing. So my friend happens to be a contractor and he was doing the work for all of his houses. And I was like, I will only buy this house if you promise, if you are the contractor. And honestly, once you finish it, if you want to be the property manager, you can get first dibs at it. I don't care. I don't care about living in this house. I just care that there is a house to my name. So then the bills started coming in and I was like, by the time we got to 50, I was like, okay, are we almost done? And he's like, no. And I was like, you said. And then it's like 60, 70. At first I was just like, send me the invoice. I'll pay. Because I had, going back to the 30, I was like, I should have a 6-figure job by 30. I thought I was going to have a house and kids, or at least a partner I could see myself with. And I had none of that. And I had just been promoted to manager. January, February, they did a reassessment across everybody. And then that moved me up to 6 figures. So I was like, that was cosa del mundo, right? I could have looked for a new job. I didn't. I was just like, and then it just happened. So at that point, I was now earning really low 6 figures, like really basically 100,000. So yo la estaba metiendo all in a savings account, just like throwing that over at the savings account. I lowered my 401k contributions to put money towards the savings account so that it could go into this house. So I was fine. But then it got to 50, 60, 70,000. And I was like, yo, you said this was going to be 50, 60, 70. And it's like, this is the cost of having a house. I was like, okay, fuck it. And then later I got another job and I was there for 7 months before I got laid off. But again, a lot of that money was going, and todo el dinero se va a ir para allá. So I was able to finish this house with relatively low impact to my personal like expenditures. I didn't see it as an extra cost because I was in a earning position where that felt fine. But as the bills started piling up, like now that I'm doing all the cuentas, I'm like, you said it was going to be 50, 60,000. It came out to like, 150,000 over here. Like,
So I guess y'all were just kind of like winging it. Just felt like y'all were just like finding things as y'all were doing them.
yeah. So he had like this and this and this needs to be done. So cuando vine a reclamarle, and I was like, hey, what the heck? Like, this was supposed to be less money. He's like, that was if we like tore down the inside walls and kept the bones and just redid everything. He's like, but by the time I tore down the walls, like got down to the studs, your studs were bad. And if I had worked on that, we would have had to like replace the studs anyway, and it just wasn't safe. So basically everything came down, and like basically a new house had to go up. And he's like, and that's what drove up your prices. We had to buy like the studs, we had to put them in, and needed like people in the crew to put all of that. So you basically got a whole new house. And I'm like, WTF. But if then I compare it to the house prices in California, I'm like, I got a bargain. Got a bargain. It's fine. But
To be
yeah,
able
if
to
I
have
compare it to like the 50,000 that I was supposed to, I was like, I did not get a bargain. I paid 3 times more what you said I was going to pay for this house.
one of the things that I was surprised when I started investing is like their houses for $100,000 in the middle of the country. What? Like, that was because I lived my whole life in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and me just like thinking about investing out of state because I do. I was just like, there is a possibility of getting a house out there for $100,000. That's crazy. I couldn't even compute that. And that was like that mentality was like make me possible to like look at other states, right? Like the possibility was there. And then your money could go much further somewhere else. But like, it seems like you were basically you used the existing foundation, and then some of the framing had to be replaced and reinforced. And I assume like a new roof as well too.
We moved wherever the kitchen was. I was like, that kitchen's huge. I don't even know how they made that kitchen work. Bring it over here. And now it has like a kitchenette, and that big kitchen kind of got divided into 2 rooms instead of one itty bitty room. So we kind of basically redesigned the layout of the house to be better. We expanded the bathroom because that thing was tiny, and apparently something happened there too. There's a well, I think, under the house. We didn't know there was a well. I was like, yo, isn't that like, poltergeist shit? And he's like, he's like, we can fill up the well, or we can cover it with wood. And I was like, fill up that well. And he's like, you sure? That concrete's gonna be a lot. And I'm like, put wood until we can fill up that well. I was like, I don't want no ghost coming through.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the things you find. So were you originally going to like use it for your own use, or did you think that it was going to be an investment?
So I call it my emotional crutch house, because this totally just comes from a place of emotion, right? I'm like, money wise, it doesn't necessarily make sense. I don't care how much it's worth or whatever. I haven't had it reevaluated yet, but I'm like, I don't care, because also it's like, hasta que lo vendes, it's not real. So I'm just like, I don't want to then add like 6 figures onto my net worth and then, it not turn out that way when you finally sell, because usually you have to like, bargain down a little. Because a lot of people are like, Missouri? Why Missouri? Like, are you thinking of moving out there? I'm like, no, this will be rented if we get lucky, and I will be lucky if it makes some money. But this is purely an emotional decision. And I know that, and I have the money to throw at it to like soften the blow. So like when I got laid off, more recently, I got depressed again. And I was like, I don't have anything to show. And my sister's like, you have a house. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a house, but I don't live in it. And I'm like, but you're right. It literally is purely there to hold me up emotionally. So they're like, are you going to sell it? And I'm like, hell no, that keeps my sanity.
Were you able to get a tenant in there?
Yes. So I got a property manager because I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I want a contractor. I will, you know how it's like you can have high expenses but you don't do a lot of the work, or you can do a lot of the work and lower your expenses. I'm like, I'm okay. I will earn California money and pay somebody to do all that stuff, right? So including the contractor, including property manager, I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I literally just need it under my name for emotional purposes. So I got a property manager. First of all, it was kind of hard to find a manager because, again, it's 30 minutes away from the main city. And then a lot of people will see that as like, that's a long ass drive. So I got the first manager and we got some paperwork signed and we were going to do a 3-month trial. By the end of around 3 months, she got somebody in. I was like, bet, because she wasn't really great at communicating. And I was like, I feel like she did the hardest part. You got a tenant. And then radio silence, or whenever I would follow up, it was one excuse after another, after another, after another. What I come to find out now is that she was also pretty silent to the tenant. And the tenant was like, hey, where do I send you the money? Where do I send you the rent? I don't want to get kicked out. Where do I send you the rent? And finally, she's like, here, cash at me the money. And I'm like, and like they sent me the screenshots, right? So like I know that they paid their safety deposit. I know that they paid like 1, maybe 2 months of rent, but I never saw that money at all. At around 3 months, I'm just like, because I was like, hey, I was supposed to get monthly reports, and she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, that's what it says in this contract. Mind you, she said she usually uses a different contract. So I was like, okay, maybe she skipped over it, I guess. And she's like, oh, I usually do quarterly contracts. And I was like, okay, well, we're coming up at the end of the quarter. That's fine. I guess send me. I was like, do you usually send all the money together after 3 months? And so she gave me a good enough explanation where it's like, I want to believe in her, right? She already got the tenant in. She just needs to set up the portals. But no, there was nothing giving me the runaround. So I went with somebody else who was in the city, but they're starting up their property management. So they're eager to get clients, right? And they're like, yes, let's do it. And they managed to set the whole portal up and everything. And I was like, I don't even have a tenant agreement. I don't know if they paid safety deposit. I don't know this. It came out to about 2,000 something dollars. And then the second property manager who I have now, finally, he's like, we might have to go into legal proceedings because he's like, we can't get her to send us anything either.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. And I had already talked to the lawyer that he recommended. And the lawyer had said, like, listen, it's going to be $200 an hour. I can drive out there, mind you, it's like 30 minutes to show up in court and then drive back. Like after 10 hours, it would basically be the amount that I'm like suing for. If it goes over 10 hours, all his work, I'm basically losing money. So unless I'm willing to make a point and I'm like, I just want this headache gone, it's fine, we'll leave it. So I could still sue for it. I was like, I don't want to. It's too much of a headache. Just be gone.
Sometimes it's just not worth it. I've had to deal with a property manager, and I just had to like suck it up because she got me in a freaking contract. Like sometimes those property managers, if they're also like a realtor, they'll have like a little thing in the contract that says like if you decide to sell the house, they get first dibs. And so I didn't know that. And so when I went to sell the house, and then she had the same issue. I think it was one of the issues because she was a part-time realtor. So yeah, she was just taking long to, at the end, I just got frustrated and I just sold the property as is. I still got a return in it, but that was definitely like more of an emotional sale because I was just so frustrated with the property manager and I wanted to get rid of her and everything. So yeah, I could see just choosing to give it up because at the end of the day, it's not going to be worth it. Like, but at least you found a decent property manager now. If like you could share your numbers that property is coming out to and stuff.
Yeah. So currently it rented, I said 900, mind you, it's in a small town. So I thought I was going to have to go down, but I was like, let's start, 900. And it actually rented for that amount. And so I was like, great. Property manager gets 10%. So they get $90 and I get $810 whenever there's not an expense. But whenever there's an expense, it tends to be in the thousands. So I usually have to deposit extra money. He'll still send me my rent money, but I'm just like, and here's a couple thousand to pay for the trees.
You did mention that now you have to add more money, which at first I would have thought that because you basically built a house that your maintenance would have been a little bit lower and stuff. So what is it that was coming up?
Yeah, so one of the big things is that the property lines were made with trees. And so some of those trees are really big now.
Mm.
Couple of them, the tenant was afraid that the trees were gonna fall on her, so she said that she had been having nightmares that the trees would fall and come through the roof and, like, that's it. That's, where her story would end. And so I'm like, "No, no, no, I wanna keep the tenant as happy as possible," right? Like, I'm like, "Who else am I gonna get to be tenant out here?" Again, I didn't get into the lead, so I don't know how easy it is to fill the tenant spot, but I'm like, keep the tenant happy. So I sent out my contractor. He's like, I don't do trees, but I can cut some branches here and there. So that was one of them. He's like, but there's these other trees that need to be cut down. And like, they're kind of going towards your neighbor's side. So that might be another issue, but you need like another company for that. So we then had to find tree trimming and they cut it down to stumps. But yeah, everybody was like telling me, like property manager, basically what they heard from the tree company is like, this is in probability that it could fall over on your neighbor's house, and then you have a whole nother thing on your hands. And I'm like, fine, cut the trees, because I was like, they've been up so long. Can we just wait a little? And they're like, yeah. But now, since you know about it, like you could be held liable. And I'm like, fine, cut the trees.
I have the same problem in my own primary house. I have like 12 trees around the perimeter of my house. And I have to spend money ongoing because sometimes they do lean over to the neighbor's house. So every 2 years, I have to prune the tree to the stump, and then it keeps going back.
And so how long has that tenant been there now?
So they've been there since I want to say June or July, something like that.
Okay.
But I wasn't seeing any money, so I was like, "Can I get a tenant agreement?" Something. So my new property manager, they said they couldn't get a tenant agreement from anybody, so they just kind of had them sign the tenant agreement they usually use, and they're like,
Mhm.
"We this will now be the tenant agreement."
It's a lot of lessons learned. Like Lynn and I, we always talk about how like that first year and basically the first 5 years is like you're just learning and figuring out stuff and figuring out your plan. Like you know, like I've been investing for years, but the first few years, like the first 5 years was just kind of like winging it, like, "Okay, I'll buy this house." The second house I bought, like, didn't do any same thing, didn't do any research, so I just like, "I'll just buy a house and rent it out." And so then when I rented it out, like, I had to pay money to have that tenant in there, so eventually I just 'cause the rent wasn't the market wasn't high enough to cover the mortgage, and then usually with the first year or so of a property, it's kind of like the stabilization period of what seems like you're going through of like finding everything and setting it up, doing all the upfront costs, and then after that, then you're finally getting into getting some income out.
But let's don't disregard that you do have a house under your name and you do have an investment property that's currently generating income monthly, and you are sitting on your butt, not doing anything, just, holding the deed on my name.
Mhm.
So you have a property manager that's dealing with the tenants in place, and the money will continue to come. And rents will increase, your property will appreciate over time. So there's like multiple ways in which you are winning as well.
So I want to know like what's next for you? Like what do you think? Are you gonna invest again in that like rural town, or are you gonna try to go somewhere else, or are you even thinking of buying another investment property?
I say that yes, if $10,000 houses come up, I'm willing to look at them, and everyone just laughs. Yeah, they're like, "There's no more $10,000 houses out here," and I'm like, "Bet." This one was just more, everything fell into place. There was a contractor there. I had the money saved up. The house came up. But yeah, if a good investment,
Yeah.
low cost investment like that comes up, that would be something that I would be willing to look into.
I know Lynn, they're not $10,000 properties, but she gets some pretty low and she does rehabs.
If anybody in the comment, $10,000 property for me, I'll buy it. Okay.
Right?
I want to challenge myself into a rehab property. Looking at one right now, but it's not a rehab property. Somewhat need some updates and stuff, which I'll be sharing if I end up getting this deal, putting an offer in and see what happens. I lost another one, and that
Ugh.
one still dream about it. That the one that got away, not because I hesitated too long. But yeah, I'm excited for you, and of course we're here if you need anything, especially then because you do a lot of you did a rehab, and if you're interested in doing another rehab, Lynn's a great resource, and excited to follow your journey and see what else you end up getting into. And also, little small plug, don't like forget to check out her episode because I had her on the Money Chisme podcast, and she went and talked about investing, especially if you're an undocumented immigrant or just an immigrant in general. She has lots of tips, and make sure to follow along her because she shares a lot of great info.
So
Yes.
if anybody wants to reach you or talk to you or listen more about your other courses, how can we reach you?
You can reach me through Instagram, Our Wealth Matters, and DM me through there. So yeah, as you said, I'm opening my income tax business this season, and then Violeta also just finished the Rain My Wealth Academy course, which I think I was like working or had the ideas of last time I was on. Now it's complete.
Other than that, any last tips or kind of lessons learned for someone that may be thinking of getting into it?
I think especially having a team in place, like knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, being, big enough to acknowledge that, but then having a team in place that fills in those gaps. So for example, I was like, I don't know anything about contracting and fixing up a house. I was like, but I got a friend who does and he'll do it for money and I got money. Or property management. And I was like, I will contract a property manager and they can handle the tenants and the contracts and everything. I just want the money. So having a team in place definitely fills in those knowledge gaps.
And we did have an episode, I'll link that as well, of like who you might need and how to find them. And so I'll post that. But yeah, thanks, Maribel, for coming on and sharing your very unique and whirlwind of a story. It was definitely probably definitely not fun for you at the time, but like, it was nice to see the story as you shared it, and again, I'm so glad that it's working now, even though you have little things here coming up, but I know that you'll start getting some of that money and actually being able to enjoy that money. But yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me on, Violeta and Lynn. It was a pleasure. And thank you, yeah, for following up.
Well, that's it for this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.